Good day to you from Inside Drug Discovery. This video presents a new drug, Bysanti, which was recently approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. This video emphasizes the drug's medicinal chemistry properties rather than clinical outcomes. Bysanti was approved on February 20th, 2026. Bysanti is approved for the treatment of schizophrenia and manic or mixed episodes associated with bipolar I disorder. Bysanti's active pharmaceutical ingredient is milsaperidone. The drug is administered orally twice per day in a dose of 6 to 12 milligrams. The sponsor for the NDA is Vanda Pharmaceuticals. A link to the prescribing information insert of Bysanti is shown on this slide as well as in the video description. Let's start with schizophrenia, one of the indications of Bysanti. Schizophrenia is a serious mental health disorder. The cause is not known. There is no known cure. Symptoms include delusions, hallucinations, speech disorders, and dysfunctional motor control. The other indication of Bysanti covers episodes arising from bipolar I disorder. I have provided a description of bipolar I disorder on this slide, but I do not want to pretend that I have a meaningful understanding of these types of conditions. Like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder has no known cause or cure. Selected symptoms are on this slide. It is hard to talk about Bysanti with its API, milsaperidone, without mentioning another compound, iloperidone. Iloperidone is a drug. It is on the market in a product from Vanda, just like Bysanti is marketed by Vanda. Iloperidone is also approved for treatment of schizophrenia and bipolar I disorder episodes. These two compounds are identical, except for the oxidation state of one carbon. This one. In milsaperidone, it's an alcohol. In iloperidone, it's a ketone. In vivo, these compounds interconvert. So regardless of which compound is dosed to a patient, the patient will have the same ratio of these compounds circulating within their system. Based on some commenters, the approval of Bysanti is not without some controversy. There have been some accusations of pipeline evergreening. This channel is not about the business of the drug industry, but it is curious to have two different drugs that are nearly identical in structure, have the same indications, and lead to the same circulating active species. I do not want to stir up controversy, but there are questions circulating about the release of these two compounds and the potential impact on patient costs. The prescribing information for Bysanti includes an extensive list of target potencies for milsaperidone. The exact mechanism of action of milsaperidone is not fully understood, but milsaperidone does act on a number of neurotransmitter receptors: norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine. And these receptors are almost certainly tied to the observed clinical benefit of the compound. The physicochemical properties of milsaperidone are shown on this slide. Milsaperidone not only must be orally absorbed, and these properties are all consistent with oral absorption, but the compound must also be able to cross the blood-brain barrier. Key properties aiding and penetrating the blood-brain barrier include having a reasonably high lipophilicity and a rather low topological polar surface area. Here are some of the key PK properties for both milsaperidone and iloperidone. Note that both compounds have fairly long half-lives. These are half-lives that, for many drugs, would readily support a once-per-day dosing regimen. The fact that milsaperidone is dosed twice per day perhaps indicates that the compound requires a narrower peak-to-trough ratio in terms of plasma concentration to maintain safety and efficacy. With regard to metabolism and excretion, the fate of milsaperidone is primarily oxidation to iloperidone. That is, oxidation of this alcohol to a ketone. Iloperidone can be reduced back to milsaperidone, Iloperidone can also undergo a hydroxylation, which could include a number of possible transformations. O-demethylation is also a documented pathway. The prescribing information mentions another metabolite, P95. Based on a quick search of the web, P95 has a carboxylic acid on this side chain. That is, the 2-carbon chain is chopped down to just 1 carbon as a carboxylic acid. This metabolite, P95, could arguably arise from the hydroxylation reaction, but it's difficult, maybe impossible, to unravel just from the information that's available in the prescribing information. In studies involving radiolabeled drug, 58% of the radioactivity was recovered in the urine and 20% in the feces. Bysanti carries a number of warnings in the prescribing information. Of note is the observed increase in mortality in some patients. This warning is in a box on this slide because it is a boxed warning in the labeling of Bysanti. The observed adverse drug reactions are very similar regardless of the patient population, whether being treated for schizophrenia or bipolar I disorder. All these adverse reactions were observed in at least 5% of patients and at least twice the prevalence of the placebo group. That brings us to the end of this summary of the NDA approval of Bysanti, which was announced by the U.S. FDA on February 20th of 2026. Bysanti contains milsaperidone as its active pharmaceutical ingredient. Bysanti is approved for the treatment of schizophrenia and certain episodes associated with bipolar I disorder. As always, thank you for watching all the way to the end. Please like and subscribe. Take care.